Alright, hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reading sections 31 through 35. 32 is extremely long, so that's why we're cutting it short. I also want to apologize for last Monday's video. I filmed that at the park on a Saturday. I always go to the park during the week, so there was just so many people and so many noises, and I get distracted so easily. So it was a little bit more choppy with how I was reading the poem, so I apologize on that. But let's get started. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, and the prism is equally perfect, and a grain of sand, and the egg of the wren, and the tree toad of the chef d'oeuvre for the highest, and the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven. And the narrowest hinge in my hand puts to scorn all machinery, and the cow crunching with depressed head surpasses any statue, and a mouse is miracle enough to stagger 6 trillions of infidels. I find I incorporate gneiss, coal, long thread moss, fruits, grains, esculent roots, and I am stoked with quadrupeds and birds all over, and have distanced what is behind me for good reason, but call anything back again when I desire it. In vain the speeding or shyness, in vain the platonic rocks send their old heat against my approach. In vain the maston retreats beneath its own powdered bones. In vain objects stand leagues off and assume manifold shapes. In vain the ocean settling in hollows, and the great monsters lying low. In vain the buzzard houses herself with the sky. In vain the snake slides through the creeps and logs. In vain the elk takes to the inner passes of the woods. In vain the razor-billed auk sails far north to Labrador. I follow quickly. I ascend to the nests in the fissure of the cliff. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their conditions. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make their sick discussions their duty to God. Not one is dissatisfied. Not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Not one kneels to another, nor to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth. So they show their relation to me, and I accept them. They bring me tokens of myself. They evince them plainly in their possessions. I wonder where they got these tokens. Did I pass that way huge times ago and neglectfully drop them? Myself moving forward then and now and forever, gathering and showing more always and with velocity, infinite and omnigenous, and the like of these among them, not too exclusive toward the reachers of my remembered branches, picking out here one that I love, and now go with him on brotherly terms. A gigantic beauty of a stallion, fresh and responsive to my caresses, head high in the forehead, wide between the ears, limbs glossy and supple, tail dusting the ground, eyes full of sparkling wickedness, ears finely cut, flexibly moving. His nostrils dilate as my heels embrace him. His well-built limbs tremble with pleasures as we race around and return. I but use you a minute, then I resign you, stallion. Why do I need your paces when I myself outgallop them, even as I stand or sit, passing faster than you? Space and time, now I see it is true, what I guessed at, what I guessed and what I loathed on the grass, what I guessed while I lay alone in my bed. And again, as I walked the beach under the paling stars of the morning. My ties and ballasts leave me, my elbows rest in sea gaps, I skirt sierras, my palms cover continents. I am afoot with my vision. By the city's quadrangular houses, in long huts camping with lumbermen, along the ruts of the turnpikes, along the dry gulch and relevant bed, weeding my onion patch and hoeing rows of carrots and parsnips, crossing savannas, trailing in forests, prospecting, gold digging, girdling the trees of a new purchase, scorched ankle deep by the hot sand, hauling my boat down the shallow river, where the panther walks to and fro on a limb overhead, where the buck turns furiously at the hunter, where the rattlesnake suns his flabby length on a rock, where the otter is speeding on fish, where the alligator in his tough pimple sleeps by the bayou, where the black bear is searching for roots or honey, where the beaver pats the mud with his paddle-shaped tail, over the growing sugar, over the yellow-flowered cotton plants, over the rice in its low moist field, over the sharp-peaked farmhouse with its scallop scum, slender shoots from the gutters, over the western Parmesan, over the long-leaved corn, over the delicate blue-flowered flax, over the white and brown buckwheat, a hummer and buzzer there with the rest, over the dusty green of the rye as it ripples and shades in the breeze, scaling mountains, pulling myself cautiously up, holding on by low scragged limbs, walking the path worn in the grass and beat through the leaves of the brush, where the quail is whistling but wicks the woods and the wheat lot, where the bat flies in the 7th-month eve, where the great gold bug drops through the dark, where the brook puts out of the roots of the old tree and the flow to the meadows, where cattle stand and shake away flies with the tremulous shuddering of their hides, where the cheesecloth hangs in the kitchen, where Andrians straddle the hearth slab, where cobwebs fall and festoons from the rafters, where the trip hammer crashes, where the press is whirling its cylinders, where the human heart beats with terrible throes under its ribs, where the pear-shaped balloon is floating aloft, floating in it myself and looking compositely down, where the life car is drawn on the slip noose, where the heat hatches pale green eggs in the dented sand, where the she-whale swims with her calf and never forsakes it, where the steamship trails and waves its long pennant of smoke, where the fin of the shark cuts like a black chip out of the water, where the half-burned brig is riding on unknown currents, where shells grow to her slime deck, where the dead are corrupting below, where the dense star-flagged is bore at the head of the regiments, approaching Manhattan up by the long-stretched island, under Niagara, the cataract falling like a veil over my continents, upon a doorstep, upon the horse block of hardwood outside the race course, or enjoying picnics or jigs or a good game of baseball at he festivals with blackguards Gibbs, ironical, license, bowl dances, drinking, laughter, at the cider mill, tasting the sweets of the brown mash, sucking the juice through the straw, at apple peeling, wanting kisses for all the red fruits I find, at musters, beach parties, friendly bees, husking, house raisings, where the mockingbird sounds his delicious gurgles, crackles, screams, weeps, where the hay rick stands in the barnyard, where the dry stalks are scattered, where the brood cow waits in the hovel, where the bull advances to his masculine work, where the stud to the mare, where the cock is treading the hen, where the heifers browse, where geese sneak their food with short jerks, where sundown shadows lengthen over the limitless and lonesome prairies, where herds of buffalo make a crawling spread of the square miles far and near, where the hummingbird shimmers, where the neck of the long-lived swan is curling and winding, where the laughing gull scoots by the shore, where she laughs her near-human laugh, where beehives range on a gray bench in the garden half hid by the high weeds, where band-necked partridges roosts in a ring on the ground with their heads out, where burial coaches enter the arched gates of a cemetery, where winter wolves bark amid wastes of snow and icicled trees, where the yellow-crowned heron comes to the edge of the marsh at night and feeds upon small crabs, where the splash of swimmers and divers cools the warm noon, where the katydid work her chromatic reed on the walnut trees over the well, through patches of citrons and cucumbers, silver-wired leaves, through the salt lick or orange glade, or under conical firs, through the gymnasiums, through the curtained saloon, through the office or public hall, pleased with the native and pleased with the foreign, pleased with the new and old, pleased with the homely woman as well as the handsome, pleased with the Quakerness as she puts off her bonnet and talks melodiously, pleased with the tune of the choir of the whitewashed church, pleased with the earnest words of the sweating Methodist preacher impressed seriously at the camp meeting, looking in and at the shop windows of Broadway the whole forenoon, flatting the flesh of my nose on the thick plate glass, wandering the same afternoon with my face turned up to the clouds or down a lane or along the beach, my right and left arms round the sides of two friends and I in the middle, coming home with the silent and dark-cheeked bush boy. Behind me he rides at the drape of the day, far from settlements, studying the print of animals' feet, or the moccasin's print, by the cot in the hospital, reaching lemonade to a feverish patient, night the coffin corpse, when all is still, examining a candle, voyaging to every port to dicker and adventure, hurrying with the modern crowd as eager and fickle as any, hot toward one I hate, ready in my madness to knife him, solitary at night in my backyard, my thoughts gone from me a long while. Walking the old hills of Judea, with a beautiful gentle God by my side, speeding through space, speeding through heaven and the stars, speeding aimed the 7 satellites in the broad rings in the diameter of 80,000 miles, speeding with tailed meteors, throwing fireballs like the rest, carrying the crescent child that carries its own full mother in its belly. Storming, enjoying, planning, loving, cautioning, backing and filling, appearing and disappearing, I tread day and night such roads. I visit the orchards of spheres and look at the product, and look at quintillions ripened, and look at quintillions green. I fly those flights of a fluid and swallowing soul. My course runs below the sounding of plummets. I held myself to material and immaterial. No guard can shut me off, no law prevent me. I anchor my ship for a little while only. My messages continually cruise away or bring their returns to me. I go hunting, polar fur and seal, leaping chasms with a pike-pointed staff, clinging to topples of brittle and blue. I ascend to my foretruck. I take my place late at night in the crow's nest. We sail the Arctic Sea. It is plenty light enough. Through the clear atmosphere, I stretch around on the wonderful beauty. The enormous masses of ice pass me and I pass them. The scenery is plain in all directions. The white-topped mountains show in the distance. I fling out my fancies toward them. We are approaching some great battlefield in which we are soon to be engaged. We pass the colossal outpost of the encampments. We pass with still feet and caution. or we are entering by the suburbs some vast and ruined city. The blocks and fallen architecture more than all the living cities of the globe. I am a free companion. I provoke by invading watchfires. I turn the bridegroom out of bed and stay with the bride myself. I tighten her all night to my thighs and lips. My voice is the wife's voice. The screech by the rail of the stairs. They fetch my man's body up, dripping and drowned. I understand the large heart of heroes, the courage of present times and all times. How the skipper saw the crowded and rudderless wreck of the steamship, and the death chasing it up and down the storm. How he knuckled tight and gave not back an inch, and was faithful of days and faithful of nights, and chalked in large letters on a board, "Be of good cheer, we will not desert you." How he followed with them and tackled with them 3 days and would not give it up. How he saved the drifting company at last. How the lank loose-gowned woman looked when boated from the side of their prepared graves. How the silent old-faced infants and the lifted sick and the sharp-lipped unshaved men. All this I swallow. It tastes good. I like it well. It becomes mine. I am the man. I suffered. I was there. The disdain, the calmness of martyrs, the mother of old, condemned for a witch, burnt with dry wood, her children gazing on. The hounded slave that flags in the race leans by the fence, blowing, covered with sweat, the twigs that sting like needles his legs and neck. The murderous buckshot and the bullets. All these I feel or am. I am the hounded slave. I winced at the bite of the dogs. Hell and despair are upon me. Crack and again crack the marksmen. I clench the rails of the fence. My gored ribs thinned by the ooze of my skin. I fall on the weeds and stone. The riders spur their unwilling horses, haul close, taunt my dizzy ears, and beat me violently over the head with whipstocks. Agonies are one of my changes of garments. I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. I hurt turn lived upon me as I lean on a cane and observe. I am the mashed fireman with breastbone broken. Tumbling walls buried me in their debris. Heat and smoke I inspired. I heard the yelling shouts of my comrades. I heard the distant clicks of their picks and shovels. They have cleared the beams away. They tenderly lift me forth. I lie in the night air in my red shirt. Pervading hush is for my sake. Painless after all I lie, exhausted, but not so unhappy. White and beautiful are the faces around me. The heads are bare of their fire caps. The kneeling crowd fades with the light of the torches. Distant and dead resuscitate. They show as a dial or move as the hands of me. I am the clock myself. I am an old artillerist. I tell of my fourth bombardment. I am there again. Again the long roll of the drummers. Again the attacking cannon and mortars. Again to my listening ears the cannon responsive. I take part. I see and hear the whole. The cries, curses, roar. The plaudits for well-aimed shots. The ambulance slowly passing, trailing its red drip. Workmen searching after damages, making indispensable repairs. The fall of grenades to the rent roof. The fan-shaped explosion. The whiz of limbs, heads, stone, wood, iron, high in the air. Again gurgles the mouth of my dying general. He furiously waves his hand. He gasps through the clot. Mind not me, mind the entrenchments. Now I tell that I know in Texas in my early youth. I tell not the fall of Alamo. Not one escaped to tell the fall of Alamo. The 150 are dumb yet at Alamo. 'Tis the tale of the murder in cold blood of 412 young men. Retreating, they had formed in a hollow square with their baggage of breastworks. 900 lives out of the surrounding enemies, 9 times their number, was the price they took in advance. Their colonel was wounded and their ammunition gone. They treated for an honorable capitulation, received writing and seal, gave up their arms, and marched back prisoners of war. They were the glory of the race of rangers, matchless of horse, rifle, song, supper, courtship, large, turbulent, generous, handsome, proud, and affectionate, bearded, sunburnt, dressed in the free costume of hunters. Not a single one 30 years of age. The second Friday morning, they were brought out in the squads and massacred. It was a beautiful early summer. The work commenced about 5 o'clock and was over by 8. None obeyed the command to kneel. Some made a mad and helpless rush. Some stood stark and straight. A few fell at once, shot in the temple or heart. The living and dead lay together. The maimed and mangled dug in the dirt. The newcomers saw them there. Some half-killed attempted to crawl away. These were dispatched with bayonets or battered with the blunts of muskets. A youth not 17 years old seized his assassin till 2 more came to release him. The 3 were all torn and covered with the boy's blood. At 11 o'clock began the burning of the bodies. That is the tale of the murdered of the 412 young men. Alright guys, ow, my wrist. What the heck? We're done for today. I will see you guys next week for 36 through 40. And yeah, we're kind of almost done. This has 52 sections, so we'll see how we go. Or actually, we're gonna read 36 through 45 probably. Yeah, but I will see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone.